opulent living room of their grand mansion felt like a battleground. Jungkook's normally composed demeanor was replaced by a storm of anger, each step echoing the disturbance in his mind. Ryan, usually a source of comfort, observed him with a mix of concern and determination. She bit her nails seeing him like that and wanted to go ask him right away, but he was too angry. He threw his bag on the bed, loosened his tie after throwing off the coat, which had little stains of blood on them. She didn't get afraid of them anymore, as she was used to them by now. He sat on the bed with his legs wide open, his feet touching the floor, his elbows on his thighs, and his hands on his forehead, and he looked like someone tired of the reality they have been living in. She slowly went to him and sat beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder with all the comfort and relaxedness. Jungkook, what's wrong? You're not usually like this. Her soft voice echoed in his ears, but he didn't give a reaction. He stayed at his place. He did want to go away from there, as he wanted to be alone at the moment. His frustration could be seen in his stern response, his eyes reflecting a tempest of emotions. Jungkook, one, I can't bear the weight of this responsibility any longer. This life will lead, especially me. It's suffocating, he said in an angry tone. His eyes could tell her what he's been going through. Vine, unwavered by his harsh tone, approached him again. Her eyes held a calm determination as she decided to reveal the notes of anger within him. Vine, Jungkook, let me help. Talk to me. We're in this together, right? Her voice, a soothing melody which was unperceived by him. Her heartbeat completely calmed, and her mind racing while thinking of the solution. Jungkook, help, Vine? You have no idea what it's like. The pressure, the constant danger. I never signed up for this. The anger in his tone deepened. The fire in his heart increased, and the flames of it reached his eyes. Vine reached out, placing a soothing hand on his hand. The touch, gentle yet firm, aimed to anchor him amidst the storm. He was so angry that he could burn her hand at the moment, and he was going to. But he looked at her. He looked at the shining eyes that had only hope in them, no matter the circumstances. The eyes that contained unexplainable determination. The eyes that were so beautiful and deep that anyone could get lost in them. And so he did. The fire in his heart seemed to cool down. For the moment he was lost in her eyes. The grip of his hand softened. The flames in his eyes lessened. The race in his heartbeat slowed down. The nerves in his head cooled down. Fine. I may not fully understand, Jungkook, but we can find a way through this. Let's face it together. You're not alone. You will never be, she said and smiled. Her small smile, which didn't even mean anything to her. But for him, he found his universe in there. Jungkook's frustration seemed to be lost somewhere in the midst of their dialogue. His eyes softened, and a tension appeared on his forehead. His voice finally calmed and grieving as he said, "It's like living in a cage, Ryan. I can't escape the expectations, the dangers. I thought leading this life would bring power, but it feels like a prison. I don't want to be caged anymore. Let me be free, please," he said as he held her hand back tightly. She placed her hand on the back of his head and pulled it close to her, making his head rest on her shoulder. "Fine. Let's not think about it today. We will find a way tomorrow. A way to make this life ours, not just something we endure. You're not alone in this struggle." Jungkook's shoulders, tense with the burden of anger, began to relax under Ryan's touch. The storm within him showed signs of abating. His emotionful voice spoke up. "It's not that simple, Ryan. I feel like I'm losing myself, and I never wanted you to get entangled in this mess." A tear fell down from his eyes as he said that about her, as he regretted his decisions. He never regretted what he did, never once, ever since she came in his life. He never cried upon things like that, considering them a part of his life and fate, until he put his head on her shoulder. He didn't care about the surroundings at the moment. He let his tear fall down. "Fine. And I never wanted you to face it alone. We're partners, remember?" He smiled and said, "Just what are you made of?" He smiled again. She smiled and looked at him, wiped his tear. He raised his face to look at her. She cupped his face in her tiny hands and said, "I learned it from you." She got closer to him and lowered her voice. "So, did you consider forgetting everything for today?" He held her hand softly, which was on his cheek, and kissed gently on it, looking at her hand for a few seconds before looking at her eyes, then at her lips. He nodded. "Let's forget it, at least for today," he said and pecked her lips, softly, firmly, resiliently. They closed their eyes and felt the depth of it, the depth of the emotions washing away, the depth of the feelings lying beneath the kiss. His anger and frustration melted away from his body as he badly needed something like this at the moment. After breaking the smooth kiss, without taking it any further, he hugged her and said, "Thank you for always being with me, always bearing my anger without getting tired. I'm grateful to have you." "Fine. You're not alone, and you don't need to care about being alone at all from now on. I will never leave your side, so better be habitual of this." He scoffed. They stayed like that for a minute. Jungkook sighed and rested in her embrace, being grateful having someone like her. She didn't break the hug until he did. She patiently stayed with him, bore his anger, and calmed him down. She knew if someone's anger is to be calmed, they need to be heard first. She heard him, understood him, and stayed with him patiently until he completed, until he was satisfied, until he broke the hug. She took it all until he was fully calmed. He broke the hug and looked at her, for once again before switching off the lights and making her sleep in his embrace. As Wine's words settled over him, Jungkook found solace in the shared vulnerability. The storm of anger began to subside, revealing a glimmer of understanding beneath the disturbing talks.